So are we live? Okay. Do we have any audience members? You're muted, Mandy.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So we're ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Okay. Well, thank you. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Colorado State House District 33 Candidate Forum, sponsored by the League of Women Voters. My name is Mark Parsons. I'm a proud member of the League, and I'm pleased to serve as moderator for tonight's forum. The League of Women's Voters is a nonpartisan political organization dedicated to fair and representative voting. For 100 years, since the dawn of women's suffrage across the country, the League has promoted informed and active participation in government and influenced public policy through education and advocacy. As I said, we're nonpartisan. The League never supports or opposes political candidates or parties. And of course, this is an online candidate forum. So according to FCC policy, it must be broadcast in its entirety, except by media reporting on events. Candidates and their organizations are requested not to record this forum. So we're talking about the Colorado House of Representatives. It is comprised of 65 representatives. Representatives are elected every 2 years from the district in which they live, and they are limited to serving 8 consecutive years. Each representative district consists of about 77,500 residents. District 33, the one in question tonight, covers the area around West Erie, Broomfield, and Superior. The format for tonight's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement. We will then begin with questions which have been submitted electronically online by the community to the League. Questions have been reviewed and edited by League screeners and will be addressed to both candidates in turn. I will ask the candidates as many questions as time permits. Each candidate will have up to 1 minute to answer each question, so please be succinct. I will alternate which candidate I ask the question of first. For the final questions, I will allow a 90-second answer, and I will note this at the time. And then we'll finish with 1 minute closing statements. So tonight's forum participants include, in ballot order, Matt Gray, the Democrat, and Mindy Kiashan, the Republican. Now to the opening statements and questions. Questions will start with the big issues facing the country and hence the state, and then move to more state-specific issues, including some of the ballot initiatives. And then we'll close with some big picture social issues. Again, we want to ask everyone to stick to the 1 minute limit. And so please watch the timekeeper's signal for the 15-second mark and stop when your time is up. If you're mid-sentence when the time is up, just promptly finish that sentence so we can move on to the next candidate. Okay, for the opening statements, we will begin with candidate Gray. Candidate Gray, please proceed.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the League of Women Voters for figuring out a way to continue this tradition of holding these candidate forums even in this really difficult time. I enjoyed them in 2018, I joined them in 2016. I know this is more difficult, but I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. It's been the honor of my life to serve this district for the last 4 years in the state legislature. We've got a lot of stuff done during that time, but there's a lot of work left to do. You know, I'm proud for having made real progress on, a number of major issues like oil and gas regulation, like funding of public education. I'm very proud to have sponsored a bill that put $135 million more into public education and earned income tax credit, as well as helping shore up our unemployment insurance system during this difficult time. There's a lot more to do in the future. We'll talk about that more in some future questions, but I'm going to honor the time limit and say thanks, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Candidate Kiashan, your turn. I'm sorry, you're still muted.
There we are. Hi, everyone. My name is Mindy Kiashan. I'm candidate for House District 33. My husband and I are small business owners. We have 3 kids, ages 17, 10, and 3. I also am involved in our community by serving on the Broomfield Housing Advisory Committee, and I'm treasurer of my son's soccer team. I grew up in a small rural farming town in Southern Illinois, raised with small town values. My dad was a small business owner. My mom was a first grade teacher at Scott Air Force Base. One of the things I did in the late 90s is I ran for Miss Illinois, and that's about the time they were going to remove the music and performing arts programs from schools. And my platform was to save those programs at inner city schools. So I actually started a dance program at an inner city school near East St. Louis. I also have been involved in inner city schools teaching illiterate kids how to read when I attended TCU. I've been very involved and passionate about education and helping our kids since my own childhood. Top priority of my campaign is fighting for school choice. I think it should be a civil right that all kids can attend the best possible school of their choosing. I'm also fighting for parental choice and keeping our community safe. Other top priorities include support for small businesses, healthcare, and transportation. But above all, I'm doing this because I want to work for my community, and I'm going to fight for our freedoms for future generations.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I didn't know
Thanks.
I ran out of time.
It's all right.
Okay.
Keep an eye on Mandy.
I can't see that. I can't see that from my point of view at all.
Oh,
Oh.
you'll just need to stay in gallery view, and then you should be okay to see it and not in speaker view.
Okay, I apologize. How do I do that?
If not, I can just tell you when it's time, if
Well,
that's
in,
okay.
in the upper right, there's a little thing that says, you can see it says speaker view or gallery view.
Mine does not say that.
You should see a little, do you see me?
I think Miss Kiachin might be on a phone or a tablet, and the phones and tablets don't generally.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'll just give you an audible signal at 15 seconds and it closing, all right?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, and then we'll also just turn to you for the very first question. And it's related to COVID, you know,
Okay.
what's affecting the whole world.
Right.
So are you satisfied with Colorado's response to the COVID-19 pandemic? If yes, why? If not, what do you think the state should do instead? You have 1 minute.
What I want to say about this is that I trust and support people to do what's right for themselves and their families. I don't support more mandates and emergency orders that are never ending. And right now, my main concern is, number one, getting kids back to school, because the mental and psychological effects are really bad even for moms that have to quit their jobs to stay home to do virtual learning with their kids. My own sister's a school psychologist, and me as a mother, we know firsthand the effects that are happening to our kids being isolated and at home. And secondly, with our economy, we need to get businesses going again. We need to give people jobs.
15 seconds.
I believe in our business community to innovate. I believe in the people to do what's right for themselves and their families, and we need to get going again. But I do care about health and safety as a number one priority, but I trust the people to do what is right.
Thank you very much. Candidate Gray.
Thank you. Yeah, I do believe our state has done as good a job as you can under difficult circumstances in following science and following our public health officials and trusting doctors and epidemiologists to understand how these things work and responding to them. Nobody likes that we're in this situation. Nobody likes that we're stuck with a disease. But as we've seen, even at the highest levels of power in our country, if you pretend the problem doesn't exist, the problem will come and fix you. The virus doesn't care that you are unhappy with it. And we've seen the most powerful people in our country come down with the virus very recently because they didn't actually follow public health guidance. So what we need to do is listen to experts, listen to scientists, listen to doctors, and that's how we'll get actually out of this and be able to reopen and get back to life in normal, not by ignoring the problem, but by listening to the experts about the problem.
Okay, thank you. So I'll continue with you, Candidate Gray. A constituent writes, I'm concerned about the further burden COVID-19 has placed on our education system and educators. How do we support educators and outcomes for our most vulnerable students?
I mean, that's a great question, and it is a really tough spot because we're in a place right now where we are underfunding education, but asking educators to do more than ever before. Where teachers before just had overcrowded classrooms, now they have potentially an overcrowded classroom and also a huge workload they have to do in digital content for the folks who are online. The answer is actually providing the resources that we need. And that's why we need to actually fund schools the way voters have said to fund schools, and to figure out solutions to do that. It's work that I've already been a part of. I've been, was proud to put a down payment on that with respect to legislation in the last session to put $135 million in new money in education. But we need to do a lot more, because the answer is that the teachers are ready. The teachers are professionals. The teachers want to rise to this challenge. It's not fair to ask them to rise to this challenge without giving them the resources to do it, and we need to give them the resources to do it.
Okay, thank you. Kenneth Kiachin.
Well, my kids I have 3 kids in 3 different schools, and they've been back in school for 7 weeks and in person every day. And there's teachers and the school and the staff, they are absolutely amazing. And I think they're an example that the other schools can do this also. And at the same time, yes, we need to accommodate those students that are in an at-risk category, but all my kids' schools are offering at-home learning as well. They have the webcams, they are doing everything they possibly can to accommodate every student, and it's working. And my kids are doing an amazing job, and so are all of the other students and teachers. And the bill that my opponent is referring to, we can't just keep writing checks to schools. It's not, we need to address the problems where they are, and writing a check every time you think that a school is underfunded. Let's address the problem where it's at instead of just continuing to give out money. Let's check our statements when we're investing in them.
Okay, thank you. So I'll continue with you, candidate Kiachin. And it relates to what you were just saying. Colorado is facing a projected budget shortfall of more than $6 billion in the next 3 years because of the reduction in tax revenue caused by the pandemic. What ideas do you bring to address this economic crisis?
Well, we need to get our people back to work. I'm a small business owner. We need to get going. We need to innovate. Every time I drive down 120th or go to Flatirons Mall, there's another business that is closed. I'm seriously concerned about the service and restaurant industries right now. We can't have more people collecting unemployment and out of work. We need to get the economy going. And I want to empower people. I believe in the people that they can do this. And we can see that just from going to a restaurant with the QR codes on a menu. My husband and I, we own two UPS stores. We have the plexiglass in front of the counters as protection. We can do this. We need to get back to work and get our economy going. That's what's going to save us.
Great, thank you. Candidate Gray. You're muted.
The budget problems you talk about are, at the multi-billion-dollar level. And I mean, 1 minute's not that much time. We need to know if the federal government is going to come in and provide aid, and there's ongoing conversations about that. And then we need to talk about how we can shore up our budget otherwise, because when you're talking about billions of dollars in shortfalls, there's no easy way to fix that. But we need to talk about how we can make our revenue system more equitable based on what actions the federal government does or doesn't take. The hit from this year was mitigated by the fact that the CARES Act came in, the bipartisan act from the federal government, but it's not clear whether that's going to come in as well. If we don't have that, we're going to have a huge shortfall, and that's going to involve cutting huge cuts to education, huge cuts to healthcare. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem, but hopefully hopefully there'll be some help from the federal government. If there's not, we're going to have serious talks about how much revenue we're bringing in, where we're investing it, because there's no way to mask billions of dollars.
Okay, thank you. So I'll continue with you, candidate Gray. New topic. Climate change is becoming increasingly visible in our region, particularly with the surge of wildfires this summer and the drought. Over the coming years, best available projections show that Colorado is increasingly likely to see emergent problems with regards to water scarcity, droughts, reduced air quality, and increased flooding risks, amongst other risks. If elected, how do you plan to reduce carbon emissions while also helping prepare for and adapt to a rapidly changing climate?
I mean, I think that these last couple of months have shown us more than ever how we can't afford to treat climate change as an imaginary problem or something that will make our grandkids deal with the fact that you look outside my window right now and you look outside everybody's window right now, that we've never had a period like this where there's nothing but smoke to breathe for weeks and weeks on end, and it's a direct result of climate change. So we have passed groundbreaking climate legislation over the past few years to set new goals and really target to address this. I personally have worked on some smaller pieces of that, on making sure we get more electric vehicles on the road, but we need to address this head on. And we've partnered with everyone from automakers to Excel Energy to everyone in between who's involved in our current carbon-based economy to move towards addressing climate change, because I think this is the first time people have seen it out their window every day. People want to be able to go outside and see the mountains. People want to be outside and be able to breathe the air without coughing. And climate change is what we need to do to address it.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Kiachin, your take.
So I definitely believe in climate change, but I believe in man-made climate change. And I always use the same example of Phoenix, Arizona, because their average daily temperature has increased due to blacktop and water irrigation. What I don't support right now is the Green New Deal, because I don't support upheaving our entire economy and way of life for something we don't fully understand. What I would argue is that a lot of our air pollution actually comes from California and China. So these are all things to look at and research, but I don't support Green New Deal. And that's something that I'd like to know if my opponent supports, because I know last year he was meeting with AOC here in Broomfield days, but then most recently his presidential candidate says he doesn't support Green New Deal. So I guess I'm wondering if my candidate still supports Green New Deal or not.
Okay, I'm sorry, we don't have the opportunity for rebuttal.
Okay.
We're keeping it straight on the questions from the community.
Okay.
So I'll turn to the next question. And again, shifting gears, do you support the Black Lives Matter movement? And what might you do to understand the ways in which racism affects our state, and to use your position, if elected, to advance racial justice?
Oh, of course, there needs to be, if you want to say, criminal justice reform, but I don't support riots. I don't support burning down our communities. I don't support continued graffiti, hate. I don't believe that Black Lives Matters is even about Black lives anymore. I think it's very sad because they kind of missed the mark with addressing the cause after the horrific video of George Floyd. That's something that I will never get out of my mind. They missed the opportunity right there to actually make a real change. And I think since then, the movement has been hijacked by groups that have other agendas, like destroying our communities. And that's something I don't support. I support our law enforcement, but injustice is injustice. And everybody should be held accountable to the same standard.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Gray.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to unequivocally state that Black Lives Matter. It's also very easy to unequivocally recognize that systemic racism is a part of our society. And living in denial of that is something that a lot of people choose to do. It also leads to systemic injustice. Systemic racism is systemic injustice. And so, yes, I have been proud to work with many of my colleagues on addressing these issues. We need to do it as well. I also believe in law enforcement. I used to work in law enforcement. I'm a prosecutor. I'm a former prosecutor, and friends with a good number of law enforcement officers in my, in my circle of friends. But also, they want to see justice also. But we shouldn't marginalize or try to act like folks who are acting to try to stop systemic racism are, somehow they aren't. It is an organized movement to try to bring racial justice that has never existed in our country and will never exist until we take active steps to do it. And I'm committed to be a part of that process.
Okay, thank you. So continuing with you, Candidate Gray, in a similar theme, but more personally, how would you engage with your constituents to make sure you understood and can represent the needs of all community members. What are your plans to ensure that all of your constituents would have access to the same resources and opportunities, regardless of race, socioeconomic status, or other considerations?
Sure, I can tell you because I do this every day. The answer is listening. The answer is listening to everyone, but regardless of whether you agree with them, you disagree with them, whether you look like them or you don't look like them, whether you have the same background or you have a completely different background, but it's to listen to everyone, really actually focus on that, not to focus on your pre-existing beliefs, where you come from or what you think, but regardless of no matter who they are, to sit and listen and hear them. And that's where we find our shared humanity. That's where we find the place where we can come together and understand, because most of our problems can be solved by listening and finding common ground. We have a lot more in common than we have apart. The question is, are we going to set up ourselves at a place where we're ready to fight? We're ready to fight with each other. And I don't want to hear any good things about the people I oppose. I want to hear bad things about the people I oppose. Or say, let's try to focus on what we have in common versus what we have separate from each other. So the answer is absolutely yes. And the way to do it is to listen, and listen humbly, and listen with respect.
Okay, thank you. So candidate Kiachin.
This is a big question. It would take me a very long time to answer the whole thing. But what I'll say is my own family is a picture of diversity, and that's a whole story for another time. But one thing I do know is I'm running for this position because I don't feel represented by Mr. Gray. So I'm doing this because I want to speak up for all of the residents of House District 33. And one of the things that I know that we all do have in common is we all want the best economical opportunities, the best schools for our kids. We want community support. Those are major things that we all have in common that I think pretty much everybody wants. And me as a woman, as a small business owner, as a mom, as a family with a lot of diversity, I feel that I can bring people together and I can give people what they need and want.
Great, thank you very much. All right, turning to some more Colorado specific issues. Again, candidate Kiachin, please share your opinion about the role of the legislature and fracking in Colorado.
Well, this is a topic that is very important to me because I actually live in Anthem and my parents live in Anthem. And this is a hot topic with the oil and gas. My number one priority is always health and safety of my family is number one. That will always be my priority. I also understand that we need the oil and gas for our economy and for energy independence here in Colorado. I also know that I am relying on the science and data, and I know that Broomfield has the best air quality monitoring system on the planet right now, so I'm trusting in that. I know that we have to keep being diligent in making sure our communities are safe, but I also know that we need oil and gas for our economy, and now is not the time to start raising energy prices on people that are losing their jobs and already hurting.
Thank you. Candidate Gray.
Sure. I mean, it's been a long 4 years that we've been working together on this issue in our community, in Broomfield, as well as in Superior, as well as in Erie. We're overly affected by this versus everywhere else in the state. And I have families across the state who have told me about how much they care about the health and safety of the folks around them. In Broomfield, we passed a local ballot proposition to prioritize health and safety. In the legislature, I voted for Senate Bill 181, which prioritized health and safety. And I think we need to do that. I think we need to be responsive to the citizens of our community. I think we're seeing more and more the data come in, and I'm excited, I shouldn't say excited. I'm eager to have more data than we had before and to see how that gets implemented in public policy based on Senate Bill 181, which I was a co-sponsor of in the legislature. But I think we're moving in the right direction as far as making progress and finally letting the citizens' voices be heard about their concerns about health and safety when it comes to oil and gas development that is so close to homes and schools.
Okay, thank you. So continuing with you, candidate Gray, what is your vision for meeting the affordable housing needs of your constituents? And what role should the legislature play?
Well, that's a really tough question because, you know, I moved to Broomfield in no small part because it was more affordable in some of the neighborhoods around it. And then I look around at the home prices I see now and it doesn't look that affordable at all. You know, that was 14 years ago. But there's a lot that we need to do. One is there are targeted programs that the state can run that I've supported to help build targeted affordable housing. And that is helpful, but the housing market is so large that that's not enough. What we need to do is to make sure that we are, you know, we have right now more demand than we have supply. So what we need to do is to make sure that we are building, you know, safe, affordable housing units across the Front Range to actually meet the demand that we have, to actually expand the supply in order to meet the demand. And that's how you lower prices. The state alone can't pass a law to say housing is going to be affordable. We need to make sure we empower folks to actually do that, to expand that supply in order to be able to meet the demand that we have. And that's the only way that we can actually have an effect on that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Kiachin.
So I'm on the Housing Advisory Committee for Broomfield, and I understand the need for all types of affordable housing. And this is something that we're working on a weekly basis right now to bring affordable housing to Broomfield and to the needs of the community. But this is on a local level. It's not something I would be doing if I'm elected, but I will say that something that is important to me is also empowering the people and making sure they're having economical opportunities, that they're having the best education, that they're having community support, so that they can build a life for themselves and not rely on the government to be dependent upon. But I do understand that the cost of housing in Colorado is through the roof. Seconds. But this is at a local level. So I would rely on the city of Broomfield to handle that.
Okay, thank you. So kind of in a similar theme, but different, again, candidate Kiachin, how do we pay for transportation and the large infrastructure needs of our state?
So this is a hot topic for me. We've been paying for over 10 years into the light rail for our area for District 33, and there's not 1 foot of fast tracks to show for it, other than a couple of Lexus lanes on I-25. And we need to be bringing more economical opportunities into Broomfield so that we're going to have the tax dollars and the money to pay for the projects. Right now, the legislature is not managing their budget. They have lots of programs that are duplicates, they're overspending. And I kind of feel like when you need something done right, you got to bring a woman in. So that's why I'm doing this. And I will go into the legislature and I will take a look at what's going on and we will figure it out and how we can get transportation going and the promised light rail.
All right, thank you. Candidate Gray, your take.
Sure, I'm the Transportation Committee Chair. I'm going to talk really fast because 1 minute is not enough time for me to talk about all of these things. Yes, we have challenges on transportation. Yes, we have challenges with the RTD Northwest Rail. It's really important, but also our fundamental RTD is a very small percentage of our overall budget with respect to transportation. The problem we have is the gas tax is too low. It hasn't adjusted for inflation since 1992. It's bleeding out our resources. We actually have a lot of bipartisan consensus about how we can get to that. We don't have a full solution on it, but I work with folks from across the aisle to try to get that done. It's a huge challenge that we have right now. Mostly involves modernizing past the gas tax because the gas tax is going to expire eventually as all modern automakers are moving towards electric vehicles. But we need to find out how to get it actually across the finish line because the last few ingredients in that have been really hard. It's been my honor to Republicans and Democrats to try to actually bring that across the finish line. But it's a really complicated thing to talk about in 1 minute. And I'm very happy to follow up with anybody, but I can do 30 minutes and not cover it. So 1 minute, that's about all I can give you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, shifting gears a little to some of the ballot initiatives. Candidate Gray, an initiative on the ballot seeks to create a statewide paid family and medical leave insurance program. Do you support this measure? If it fails, should state or local lawmakers pursue similar measures?
Is that the question? Yeah. I do support it. I've been one of the most prominent supporters of this policy for years. I do support it because People across the political spectrum say we should deliver paid family leave, but the truth is 4 out of 5 Colorado families, 4 out of 5 Colorado workers don't have access to it. And so what we have is we've got mothers going back to work 2 weeks after they have children. We've got children who are taking their parents off of life support when they're at work and they can't even take the time to go be with them. It's something that everybody says should happen, but everybody also says, oh, it's too hard to implement. It's not too hard to implement. We had a year-long study based on a bill that I ran in 2019 to study the efficacy of this program. That study said, yep, this is something we can do. This ballot initiative is designed around that. Again, I could talk about this a lot longer too, but the answer is yes, I wholeheartedly support it. I'm one of the most core supporters of this initiative, and Colorado workers deserve paid family and medical leave.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Kiachin.
So I oppose this. My opponent was the primary sponsor of this bill, and it failed 3 times prior. And the reason it's failing is because it's too extreme. It's forcing and making a mandate that everyone has to have it. What if they don't want to have it? It's forcing an employer and an employee to pay into it, and it's not giving an option to not pay into it. It's a great idea in spirit, but it's not a great idea when it's forcing people to do something. It's another law. It's another mandate on people. I am for limited government. I am not for more laws, more imposing mandates on people. It should be a choice. And he opposed having a paid family medical leave option that was business friendly, that would give people the option of if they want it or not. And it can also cause unintended hiring discrimination. There are a lot of issues with this bill.
Okay, thank you. So I'll continue with you, candidate Kiachin. And getting into some of the weeds of the ballot initiatives, Amendment B is a repeal of the Gallagher Amendment, which mandates that non-residential property taxes equal 55% of the total share of state property taxes, and residential property taxes equal 45% of the total share of property taxes. Do you support the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment? Why or why not?
The Gallagher Amendment, I don't like how it penalizes small businesses with higher property taxes, but at the same time, it would give the legislature a blank check, which I definitely don't like. Another issue with this is relating it to TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, which obviously we're lucky to have, because it means that the people have to be asked if they want to raise taxes. But this is something that my opponent supports getting rid of, is TABOR, which would make it easier for the legislature to keep passing more laws and raising taxes on the citizens. And I don't support that.
Okay, thank you for being succinct. Candidate Gray.
Sure, just as a matter of course, I'm going to disavow what Ms. Kiachin says, I believe, and I'll just stick with what I believe, but I don't want to get into that. I'd rather have a productive conversation. But what I'll say is, yes, I support Amendment B. It is not true that repealing Gallagher would give the legislature a blank check, because TABOR already says to raise an assessment rate, you have to have a vote of the people. So the TABOR protections actually already apply, even if you remove it. What it would do is stop the degradation of the residential assessment rate, which again, I definitely can't describe in 1 minute. But it would stop that from going down. It would keep levels where they are right now. That's incredibly important for rural communities, for fire districts, for school districts, for the kind of government that we all agree is a key important part of what we're doing. It's why the business community and folks from all across the state support this initiative. It's really important because what you're seeing is the degradation of fire protection and school provisions in our most needy communities. And we absolutely need to pass Amendment B.
All right, thank you. Y'all are doing excellent at staying on time. I really appreciate it. So continuing with you, candidate Gray, Proposition EE would increase taxes on tobacco and other nicotine products like e-cigarettes, vaping, etc. Do you support this one? Why or why not?
I do support EE. It's a really complex area of policy. But I mean, where we wound up is we are in a situation where vaping isn't taxed in this state the same way that cigarettes are. And the challenges it places for public health are exactly the same. And so you know, talking to public health advocates, talking about the people who care about our kids, and talking frankly to parents in the Broomfield, Superior, and area communities. They're really scared about vaping, and they're really scared about the impact it's having on their kids. And so it's a way to both, you know, fund some projects that we need to fund, but more importantly, just to try to stop the epidemic of teen vaping, which is such a threat to our community right now. So I do support it.
Thank you. Candidate Kiachin.
I definitely don't support smoking or endorsing using any tobacco products, but at the same time, I don't support higher taxes. I don't think that's the answer right now, is raising taxes on everything, because we need to look at why is our budget the way it is? Why is the legislature not able to manage their money? And I don't think continuing to raise taxes on everything is the answer.
Okay, thank you. So continuing in that vein of taxes, Proposition 116, and this is again still for you, Candidate Kiachin. Proposition 116 would reduce the flat state income tax rate from 4.63% to 4.55%, a 0.08% reduction. Do you support this or not? And please explain.
Yes.
Would you like to say a bit more, or are you happy with the thumbs up? All right.
I support decreasing the income state tax.
Okay. Candidate Gray.
No, not at all. Part of it is it's more complicated than that, right? Like that when you do that, what you're, you know, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So you can say we're going to decrease the income tax rate, and that's fine. What you're saying is I want to take more money out of our schools. I want to take more money out of our healthcare. I want to take more money out of transportation. I want to take more money out of the crucial services that, as you pointed out before, we're in a multi-billion-dollar deficit on right now because of the situation. So does it feel good to say that? Sure, it feels great to say that. Does it feel good when you're the teacher whose salary is getting cut? No. Does it feel good when you're the person who's getting kicked off of their healthcare because we can't afford it? No. Does it feel good when you're the business who can't get the transportation improvements that they need because the transportation budget has been slashed? No. So frankly, no, I don't support it, because we have to be serious about this. We have to be adults about this, and to say when you're in a $3 billion hole, the solution is to keep digging doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, thank you. So you all have been very good about being on time. I appreciate that. So I'm going to bring in a few extra questions that came in from the community that are a bit more general. And so I'll start with you, Candidate Gray. What is your number one priority? Why? Candidate Gray, did we lose you? You seem to be frozen. I hear a little bit of you.
It might be my internet. I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
What is your number one priority and why?
I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Did you
Sorry,
hear the
my
question?
internet got really weird there for a second. That's all on me.
That's all
Can you
right.
repeat?
The question is, what is your number one priority and why?
Well, my number one priority right now, you know, there's the whole, you know, subtext of it depends on whether or not Proposition 118 passes. If it does pass, and it's looking pretty good, my biggest priority is going to be implementing paid family for workers across the state. But either way, like my shared number one priorities are actually solving our transportation funding problem. We have a transportation funding crisis in the state. I am the transportation committee chair. We have COVID derailed a lot of productive conversations about doing that. But, you know, right now that problem is sort of masked by the fact that a lot of people are, you know, staying at home and not commuting the same way. That's going to go away. We're going to beat this pandemic. And once we do, we're going to need to have a transportation system that's adequately funded, and we need to solve that problem. We need to do it sooner rather than later, because you can't catch up. Infrastructure is expensive and it takes a long time. You can't fix it in a day. We need to actually solve the problem. We need to solve it now.
All right, thank you. Candidate Kiachin, your number one priority.
I think my overall priority is protecting our freedoms for our children and our children's children, and stopping the overreach of the legislature. Colorado is currently a one-party ruled state, and I bring balance and voice of reason. We need to have checks and balances and accountability. But other than that, definitely school choice, parental choice, support for small businesses. And that's inclusive of supporting our teachers, getting our kids back to school. Something that my opponent supports is mandatory vaccinations. I support vaccinations, but I don't support making mandatory vaccinations. And that's inclusive in my parental choice. School choice, it should be a civil right that every child can go to the best school of their choosing. The dollars should follow the backpack. But I support all schools. I support all teachers. I support our kids, number one, and I support our small businesses getting back to work and providing jobs that our community needs to get going.
Okay, thank you. So another sort of broad general question, candidate Kiachin. What are your thoughts about the role of local governments versus state government?
Well, I support limited government no matter what. I don't support ruling the people. I support empowering the people. And I think that there's a lot of laws that can be made on a local level, that we don't need the state interjecting and telling an entire state what they need and can and cannot do. But I want to empower the people, and I want to have a limited government. That's what I support, and freedom.
All right, thank you. Candidate Gray.
Yeah, I think we have a really great tradition in the state of Colorado of balancing out local control versus the state. You know, we have the ability to create home rule cities and home rule municipalities within our state, where we give a lot of local control to local governments that want it. And there's a real balance there where the state can't tell them what to do with respect to a lot of their actions. So I think we have a really good balance in the state. We're one of the most powerful states in the union when it comes to giving empowerment to local governments. And I think that's the question, right? I think we need to balance giving as much control to local governments who really have the time and resources to invest in it as possible, without putting the burden on some of the smaller local governments to say, you have to do this all on your own. We're not going to give you the resources. So we need to share state resources with local governments who don't have the ability to spend hours and hours and hours debating these things, but also give the freedom to those that do, to be able to set their own policies for their own communities.
All right, thank you. Keeping it fairly open-ended, candidate Gray, what does good governance mean to you?
I think it means governing with integrity. I think it means governing with honesty and openness and transparency and kindness as those who act in government. People like myself who actually act and are in charge of governance, to do it with openness and honesty. And I think beyond that involves always focusing governance on the interests of the people that you're serving and not your own personal interests, but to try to figure out a way to build the best system you can for the workers in your community, for the families in your community, for the businesses in your community, for the nonprofits in your community, but to work with a servant's heart and to try to build the best community that you can for all of the people that you serve, but to truly act as a public servant, not as somebody who's serving your own interests.
All right, thank you. And candidate Kiachin, good governance.
For a good government for America is that we were founded with the principles in our Constitution, with freedom, capitalism, American dream, liberty. I support all of those things, and I don't support the government making more laws to prevent people from being empowered and from having achieving the American dream and being able to live their life how they want to live it. I don't like dependence on the government. I don't support more mandates, but what I do support is our Constitution and empowering people, which is what I've said before, but definitely capitalism. And my own husband is a product of being able to achieve the American dream. He's a first-generation American, and it's an amazing thing to see. I love talking to immigrants that have achieved the American dream. United States of America is the only place on the planet where you can have that.
Okay, thank you. So continuing with you, candidate Kiachin, what do you think is the most pressing matter that pertains to the next generation of Coloradans, the youth, particularly those who may be voting for the first time?
The most important issue?
For those who, who are just coming into the electoral process.
Well, they need to decide what kind of government, what kind of world do they want to live in? Do they want to live in a socialist country, or do they want to have freedom? Do they want to enjoy capitalism? Do they want to be able to achieve the American dream, or do they want to be dependent on the government for everything? I believe that the sky is the limit. I want limited government. I don't think that we need to have the government providing us everything and taking care of us. I think that the future generation has a bright outlook if they can achieve their dreams and they can fight for the freedoms that we've all enjoyed.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Gray.
Yeah, overwhelmingly, the greatest crisis facing the next generation is one of affordability, and it's beyond doubt. Housing costs have gone up, the cost of education have gone up, student debt has gone up, and the ability of this generation to be able to enjoy the things that my generation has, and certainly the generations before, have gone away because of all overwhelming economic inequality. We're asking students to take on a ton more debt to get a college education that does not guarantee them a living wage and the ability to actually afford the kind of lifestyle that you would think somebody would have a college education would be accustomed to. And so addressing that is overwhelmingly important, because the way we became the richest and most powerful nation in the country is by having a strong middle class. And we are eradicating that through massive income inequality at this time. So if you actually talk to the young people, if you actually address them and talk to them, what they'll tell you is they don't believe for a second they're going to be able to buy into the American dream that was promised to generations before. And words are great, but actions are what is needed to actually make those things affordable and be able to deliver that for that. But there's a lot to get from where we will be.
All right. I'd like to wrap up now. I have a final question that I previewed you with before we started the session, and you have 90 seconds for this, so a little bit longer time, and I think it requires some thought. So I hope you think about it carefully. And so I'll start with you, candidate Gray. We're in very partisan times, but more than a third of Coloradans are unaffiliated with any party. This suggests we need to be open and flexible in our thinking and respect for others. So please share a situation in which you changed your view or perspective on a social or policy issue. What was the issue, and what information or experience changed your mind? And what did you learn from that experience, and how would it affect how you govern?
Sure. I mean, I have worked so closely and so deeply with so many of my Republican colleagues on so many issues. You know, Assistant Minority Leader Kevin Van Winkle and I disagree on a great number of issues, but we've passed a lot of legislation together. Former Assistant Minority Leader Cole West and I disagree on a great number of issues, but we've passed a lot of legislation together. Representative Hugh McKean, a Republican from Loveland, we disagree on a lot of things, but we've passed a lot of legislation together. Terry Carver, who is a absolute, she's a intellectual force as a Republican in the state legislature. We've passed laws together. So I do this work all the time, because as I do this work starting from a place of, let's start with what's best for public policy. And I love working with my Democratic colleagues. I love working with my Republican colleagues. Mark Catlin is the ranking member on my committee, and he's one of the people I honor and respect the most in the whole General Assembly. Jim Wilson, from Salida, is one of the people I respect most in the entire world. But the answer is not actually starting with that mindset, not starting with the mindset of, I'm from this party, you're from that party, but instead saying, what's the best idea? But again, the Republicans in the chamber, I have some of my warmest relationships with all of them, because on areas where we can get together, I love working with them. I've passed a ton of bipartisan legislation. I passed oil and gas legislation with Lori Sain, one of the most conservative people in the General Assembly, because if
Thank you.
if you actually can get past the challenges that you present.
All right, Kenneth Yachin, this perspective, a time where you changed your perspective on an issue and what you learned.
I think number one above all was when I became a mother. Never knew what that was going to be like till that happened. And that has been the best experience of my life. But, you know, I know day by day I have to adjust and change what I'm doing so that I can provide and take care of my family to the best of my ability. I've said many times to people, so my husband and my son both have ADHD. My other son actually has an executive functioning disorder. So it's been a real challenge as a mother, just understanding how to be a mom and be a wife to the needs that they have. And that's been a tremendous learning curve and learning experience throughout all the years. My oldest son is 17 now, just turned 17. I think I spoke earlier about the diversity in my family. I recently have a very close family member that came out as transgender, and that's been life-changing also and eye-opening. My husband's a first-generation American. His parents immigrated here from the Philippines, and he had a really tough life. But they made it and they've achieved the American dream. And I feel that I can connect with so many different types of people with all of the background and experience that I have. And I'm always striving to learn more and wanting to help everybody of this district. That's why I'm doing this. And I'm doing this because I personally don't feel represented.
Okay, thank you. So actually, I've exhausted all my questions. You all have been gloriously succinct. I should have given you more time. So I will give you more time for your closing statements. So I'll start with you, candidate Kiachin, if you, in 90 seconds, could provide a closing statement.
Sure. So I bring balance and a pragmatic approach to this legislation. I'm a constitutionalist, voice of reason. Like I've said, I want to represent all the people. I'm doing this for my family. Number one, I'm doing this for my family. I'm fighting for their future. That's number one reason why I'm doing this. I'm a suburban soccer mom. I'm a woman. I'm a small business owner. I understand the families in this district and I want to work for them. And like I've said, I support a government of we the people, limited government, empowering the people. I don't agree with my opponent on many issues because based on his voting record, he's not a moderate. He votes party lines every time. And I won't go into the votes that I disagree with, but they can be looked up for anybody out there that wants to know, or they can contact me. I don't agree with them in terms of a mother and what they stand for and how I see them moving forward with small businesses and our future. But I care about all the residents of House District 33. I know what the parents want. We want the best schools. We want safe communities. We want parental choice. I know that our seniors, they want superb healthcare. They want to make sure the retirement is protected. And our professionals, they want the best infrastructure and economical opportunities. I will not back down, and I'm going to work for this district, and I've earned everything that I have in my life, and I want to work for you, and I'm honored, and I'm asking for you to vote for me in November. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So candidate Gray, 90 seconds, your closing statement.
Thank you very much. Again, as I said before, it's been the honor of my life to serve this district. I look forward to hopefully continuing to do so. And I mean, frankly, we're heading into a tough time. Like it's easy to say that we should cut taxes and also improve healthcare and also improve education and also improve care for seniors and retirement all at the same time. But there's not a money tree to take care of that. We're here to face really difficult situations. You know, part of governing is about doing more than, you know, saying the slogans or saying the things you wish you could happen. It's about dealing with the hard choices you have to make. And if you cut revenue, you also have to cut where you are investing in your society, and in where our state invests in society is in transportation, in education, and in healthcare. So that's where the money goes. And there is no money tree that says we can actually reduce our revenue and also invest more or not just dramatically cut education, transportation, and healthcare. And I think at this moment in our society, more than anything else, we need to invest in transportation, in education, and in healthcare. And so I have been doing that work. It is really hard. It is really hard to deal with the tough decisions about what the state budget's going to be like, what the state revenue is going to be like. But it hasn't been fun. I'm signing up for more of the not fun because it's so important to actually deliver results in those areas, and to deliver in transportation, to deliver in education, and deliver in healthcare. I look forward to doing more than we already have before, and I'm proud of what we've done so far.
Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Excellent participants. And so on behalf of the League, I'd really like to thank our candidates, not only for their participation in tonight's forum, but also their participation in the whole democratic process. Running for office, as Matt said, and as Mindy alluded to, is hard work, and serving as an elected official is hard work, and we really appreciate your efforts. And so thank you also to our League candidate forum volunteers, especially Josephine Porter, who instructed us new moderators. And volunteers are what makes the League the effective and respected organization that it is. I'd also like to thank the League's invaluable operations director, Mandy Nuku, who makes everything work. And finally, thank you to the audience. These are very challenging times, and it's all the more reason to ensure that we have a strong democratic process that engages as many community members as possible. Colorado has one of the most efficient and accessible voting processes in the country, so let's use it. Thank you for your participation and for encouraging your family members, friends, everybody to pay attention to important issues affecting your community, and most importantly, of course, vote. And check out our League voter information website, vote411.org, for election information. And finally, the League works throughout the year to help empower voters and defend democracy. If you would like to be involved and lend your time and skills to encourage civic engagement for all people in a nonpartisan manner, please join us. All the information you need is on our website, LWVBC, League of Women Voters, bouldercounty.org. So thanks again to our candidates, our audience, excellent forum. Thank you very much to everyone, and good night.